Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. Your host, a behavioral scientist and bachelor, talks to leading experts and successful singles about living solo and living well. Travel more, make things, sleep in when you want to. Here's the playbook for the person who is unapologetically unattached. Now, please welcome Dr. Peter McGraw.
So solo travel for me is not necessarily the solitude, but it is, as Ashley mentioned, it's the autonomy. It's the ability to wake up and say, here's what I feel like doing today. And that might be maybe a spa day and I really want to self-care and pamper, but it also might be, I want to go on a pub crawl and meet people and have exchange of cultures and ideas and conversation. It's about what I want to do and not catering to my travel partners. So that's what solo travel embodies for me. It's the autonomy of it rather than just the solitude.
Welcome back to the final episode in my 6-part series on solitude. I invite 2 solo travelers, one part-time and one full-time, to a live taping for my solo club on Clubhouse, the new social media app featuring real-time conversations. We discuss their experiences traveling alone, how they meet people on the road, and how they walk a city. In other words, how they flaneur. Remember that episode? They present some tips for packing, saving money, and safety. And whether or not you are comfortable going to a movie or dining alone, I hope you find this conversation motivating and that you're willing to give solo traveling a try. It can be hugely rewarding. We close the conversation with a question. What do you do when a couple asks you to move seats on an airplane so they can sit together? I hope you enjoy the episode. Let's get started. Welcome to a special live taping of Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's first guest is Ashley McCurdy. After getting laid off from her corporate job, Ashley put her things in storage, threw some essentials in a carry-on suitcase, and booked a one-way flight to Florida. After doing the math, she realized that it was cheaper and more fun to live full-time in hotels instead of paying expensive California rent. Ashley documents her adventures on her YouTube channel, In Search of Traveler, where she is in search of the new normal of traveling during coronavirus. Welcome, Ashley.
Thanks for having me.
Our second guest is Ahita Kabir.
Yes, sir. You got it.
All right. I've never said your last name before.
We're getting to know each other on a whole new level.
Indeed. Ahita has more than 13 years of professional experience in diversity and inclusion, consulting, and project management. Her accomplishments include designing corporate diversity initiatives to improve the recruitment, leadership, development, and career advancement of diverse talent. Beyond her day job, Ahita is an avid traveler, 61 countries to date. As she puts it, she travels nights, weekends, holidays, and vacations. Welcome, Ahita.
Very excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Peter.
It's my pleasure. It really is. We are taping this in a solo club room on Clubhouse, a social media app that features real-time conversations. Besides hosting this podcast solo, I've been building a community on this app, and Solo, the club for singles on Clubhouse, already has 30,000 subscribers. Please consider joining and find out all the solo clubs, including the Solo Travel Club, and you can find out more about that at soloclubs.com. We're recording this session. We'll talk for about 45 minutes, and then we're going to turn the recording off and have a Q&A with whoever's left in the audience when we're finished. How's that sound?
That sounds great. No, I hope everyone stays in the audience because that's part of what I love about Clubhouse. I want to have actual conversations live.
It's true. So this is part of a series that I'm doing on solitude. But I think that we're going to find that traveling solo doesn't mean that you're alone all the time. Quite the contrary. If you want to make connections, you can do that. And I think we'll get into that a little bit. Why don't we start a little bit with kind of how did you get here? How am I talking to the two of you on solo about solo travel? You both approach your solo travel in really different ways. And that's why I chose the two of you. Who wants to go first? Ashley, you want to go first?
Sure. So yeah, my story is a story about making lemonade out of lemons. And as you said, I lost my job and I was just kind of a little bit discouraged and I didn't know what that next step was going to be. One night and a lot of rosé later, I started watching some travel YouTube videos, and there were some YouTubers that were making a lot of money who said, I've never held a camera before, I've never traveled out of the country before, and they just did it, and they lived by the model, how hard could it be? So I thought to myself, I went to film school. I went to a top 10 film school in the States. So really, how hard could it be? It actually was very hard, and it still is very hard, but it's been one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. But yeah, so I've just been on this adventure, and then in January, I joined Clubhouse and quickly met you and Ahita and some others, and here we are now.
Were you an avid traveler before this? Like, did you have travel chops?
Yeah, so my travel stories, my dad was a corporate traveler. So my dad's like lifetime platinum with Marriott, a million miler with United. So I grew up really seeing the perks of brand loyalty, which I think is why I'm such a loyalist, seeing things that my dad got. And I wanted to emulate that, as a young working professional in my 20s, but I didn't have the money to emulate that. So I quickly learned how to find a deal when traveling. So I would plan these like really epic trips, and I would have so much fun spending 4 to 6 months putting together the perfect trip for the best deal and really researching like, okay, I want to do this tour. What's the best tour that I can find at the cheapest price? And it was like almost a game to me. And I became known as like this amazing traveler that went on epic trips for like a really reasonable price. So I knew I could travel hack and I could save money and it would be cheaper to live in hotels than paying rent. But I had no idea how good I could get at it. And now I'm living comfortably on $500 a week. So I've really learned how to maximize programs and travel hacks and credit cards and all that kind of fun stuff. And then also stretch that dollar.
And where are you right now? And where are you headed next?
I am currently sitting in a hotel room. As you can see me, I know everybody in Clubhouse can't see me, but I'm sitting in the middle of a hotel room in Mexico City. After this, I'm actually headed back to the States to get my second dose of the Pfizer vaccine before heading to West Palm Beach, Florida, to meet up with a bunch of travel content creators for a meetup. There's a room on here that we go to every night. And so I think there's like 20 of us that are going to meet up in Florida for a weekend. And then after that, I'm headed to Costa Rica.
I might have not gotten the invitation for that. It must be still arriving in the mail, I'm guessing.
It's on the way. It's on the way.
So for those of you who don't know this, there's a fun room that's run almost every night, I think, whether the host is there or not. And I always jump in and cause problems. So the fact remains, I'm not surprised. And I'm also not a content creator, so I think we're okay. But I think that's really wonderful. Now, what's the longest amount of time you've been in a hotel?
Well, I've been traveling full time since July 20th, 2020. But I've been either in a hotel at my parents' house, like for the holidays. I've stayed with some friends for some of it, but the majority of the time has been in actual hotels. So mostly Marriott. In 2020, I stayed 103 nights. I don't know what my current count is for 2021, but I've already hit titanium status, which is the second highest tier. I do have enough nights for ambassador. I just have to hit the spend to hit ambassador, which is Marriott's top public status for 2022.
They might have to start a new level for you. We're not even halfway through the year yet. That's amazing. I want to learn more about this as we go on. Ahita, you have a different approach to your travels these days. You're more of a part-time traveler.
Yeah, no, I've been a part-time traveler always. And it's interesting. I kind of fell into it, even though I grew up, for those of you that don't know me, I was born in the States, but I grew up bouncing back and forth between Bangladesh and the US. So I was always on planes, and I've been on planes, I think, since before I was a year old. So I actually find planes really comforting. So when you hear that rumble of the plane taking off, it's literally like a lullaby. Like I will pass out every time, like clockwork. Even if I want to stay awake and watch movies, it's immediate. But in my adult life, as a teenager, I didn't really travel a lot. And the only place I really went when I was in college was to Mexico, I think, for a weekend. And I loved it, but I never aspired to be a traveler per se. For me, it was more that once I started traveling a little bit, so I think after a bad breakup, I had a friend who was living in London, and I said, I'm going to come visit you and we'll go to Paris for the weekend. And I kind of fell in love with it because she was in school during the day. So I ended up exploring myself, and I realized really quickly that it was easier and cheaper for me to travel abroad than it was in the US. So that's how my wanderlust came into play initially financially, because I was still just right out of college. I didn't quite have a plan, but when I would compare hotel and flight prices, I was like, I might as well hop abroad. I might as well go to the Caribbean or South America or just chase the flight tickets. So that's how I started, and it really became an addiction. I'm not seeking help, so please don't send any. But it's become really a form of self-care for me over the last decade plus, which sounds crazy to say. So I've now been to 61 countries, and I'm going to Guatemala next weekend. So that will be my 62nd. And I have found not just a lot of myself when I travel, but I love the immersive experiences and the ability to connect with other beings around the world. That's really what fulfills me. As a true extrovert and only child, I love connecting with people from all over the world. So that's a little bit of how I got started and why I keep going.
And what percentage of your trips would qualify as a solo trip, do you think, Ahita?
Probably about at least 50% of it. And I say that split is because I didn't really start solo traveling until maybe the last 4 or so years. And it happened by mistake. My first trip, that was a solo trip, ended up being that way because my friend got food poisoning and didn't join me. And I was already in Vietnam. So I had no choice but to carry on. And I will admit that the first few days were a bit awkward. I didn't know how to meet people. I just followed the itinerary and kind of went back to my room because I wasn't sure what to do. But by the end of the trip, really the last night, I kind of found a little bit of my rhythm, and I met people by asking to take their pictures and just started forming that connection. So I really found my rhythm, and it was so addictive that 2.5 months later, I just felt the need to go back out into the world. And I saw that there was a cheap flight to Ecuador. So I went for a long weekend, and I've kind of never stopped. I keep experimenting, and I can't wait to get back out there.
I think we should jump into this right away. So as I said, this is a series that I'm doing on solitude. And one of the kind of themes has been about the sort of costs versus benefits of solitude. That is that a lot of people think of solitude, they immediately think about loneliness, and they think about the challenges of loneliness and how upsetting and problematic that can be. But one of the findings that comes through time and time again about loneliness is it's actually not really about a state of being alone per se. It's more like a state of wanting to not be alone. That is, you can be lonely in a crowd, you can be lonely in a marriage, but you can also be lonely on a plane, right? Sitting there. Well, not Ahita, she's asleep. But there's also these great benefits of solitude, right? A chance for self-reflection, a chance for creativity, certainly the freedom that goes with making those choices. Whatever choice you want. As I had a previous guest says how much she enjoys not having someone edit her life. And I think that when you travel with someone else or a group of people, they often can edit where you go, when you go, how long you stay, and so on. So maybe if you two could talk to me a little bit about your perspective on solitude and to what degree, even though you're traveling solo, your time might not be alone, right? Ahita's already, I think, teased us a little bit with her Vietnam story in terms of meeting people.
I actually have a lot of anxiety and social anxiety. And so for me, it was always a balance. If I would go on a trip with friends, I would find it almost exhausting because being in groups of people is very energy draining for me. And you feel like you have to be on all the time and all of that. And so for me, I would always have in group trips, what we called solo days. And so we would do our own thing. And I found a lot of joy in that, of kind of having time to myself, kind of what you were hinting at with not having to worry about somebody telling you where to be, what to do, what to eat, when to do it, that I could just do what I felt like doing in that moment and really just be with my own thoughts, doing my own thing. And so that kind of gave me the confidence to start exploring and doing that solo travel thing and taking longer and longer trips alone and realizing I really enjoy my own company. But there is a balance because loneliness is a thing, and we do need human connection. So what has worked really well for me is with sightseeing things, I always try and book group tours, and I've met a lot of really amazing friends on the road. I know there's one girl, Kristen, who I met at a Marriott breakfast in Cancun, who actually is going to be, she last week and then this week is going to be co-hosting the Digital Nomad Room under Solo Travel. But yeah, I just always try and smile and say hello to people. But you would be surprised. I've met so many amazing people on the road. I met one girl who was getting her eggs frozen, and we became fast friends. And I actually went to the appointment with her because she was traveling solo. and helped her pick out her sperm donor and just crazy stuff. So you never know who you're going to meet on the road. And there's just so many interesting people who are in the same situation. They're just looking for conversation and they want to be around people and to feel heard and appreciated. So just smile and say hello is always my tip.
And I'll put in the exhibits, I took a screenshot of this room, and you'll see Ashley has this picture for her hands out, and she's just got this big, wide, wonderful smile, and it's so fitting. I like this idea of a solo day as part of group travel. I've talked about this before on the podcast, where I used to do these group trips, like these New Year's trips with a very close group of friends. I mean, outstanding people, lots and lots of fun. But invariably, at some point, we were going to go out yet another night. And despite being an extrovert, I just said, folks, I'm just going to stay in. I'm going to do some reading, watch a movie, and just chill out. I needed a little bit of a break. And as I've gone on in my life, I find myself really enjoying the solo travel, but then looking for those connections that might be, as I might say, on my terms, so to speak, that's there. How about you, Ahita? How do you kind of balance that time with meeting people, and how do you go about doing it?
So I'm a little bit of the opposite of Ashley. As outspoken and outgoing as I am online is how I am in real life. And I always say it's because I'm an only child. So I was the kid at kindergarten that I literally remember waving to my mom who was peeking in through the window. And I said, bye, I don't need you here. Like there's little people. I legitimately, I was like, there's little people my size that I can talk to. I don't need you here anymore. So I really do. I'm truly the definition of an extrovert. I thrive off of human connection and energy. So solo travel for me is not necessarily the solitude, but it is, as Ashley mentioned, it's the autonomy. It's the ability to wake up and say, here's what I feel like doing today. And that might be maybe a spa day and I really want to self-care and pamper, but it also might be I want to go on a pub crawl and meet people and have, exchange of cultures and ideas and conversation and create a community while I'm on the road. But it's all about what I want to do and not catering to maybe my travel partners. So that's what solo travel embodies for me. It's the autonomy of it rather than just the solitude.
So you're 61 countries. You sound like you go to a wide array of places, right? You said from South America to Europe and beyond. Do you have, either of you actually, I'm curious, like kind of beats within your day that you do when you're kind of out there? Like how much are you doing sort of touristy things? How much are you doing sort of local things? I ask because I tend to try to recreate my like LA or Boulder life in these other places, sometimes imperfectly, like up in the morning, finding a cafe, do some reading, doing some writing, creative work, find a way to work out, but then also picking some spots to do the things that you can only do in Florence or, in London or Tokyo.
Yeah. So for me, because I'm a part-time traveler, I do fit in a lot more. I always tell people, if you are coming on a trip with me to be relaxed, you're probably not going to get that experience because I'm trying to fit in as much as I can. So I sacrifice willingly my sleep, but in exchange for all of the experiences. So when I am planning a trip, I will try to say, what are my must-dos? And it might be maybe the big cultural icons that are there. If you're going to Brazil, you probably want to go to Christ the Redeemer, right? But after that, I really prioritize, unsurprisingly, people, food, and cultural immersion experiences. So I will generally try to do like a cooking class or a walking tour or the pub crawls, like I mentioned. So it's very dissimilar to my everyday life. But I also think I'm much more relaxed when I'm traveling, despite all of the things that I'm doing, because for me, it's a chance to be my most authentic self. I think the people that meet me on vacation get to see the best version of myself in many ways because I'm truly prioritizing me because all of my commitments are kind of back home. And I get to say, here's what I feel like doing today. And it's to hang out with some people and maybe learn how to cook their food or learn how they live their daily lives, just having that exchange.
Do you sleep better on the road or at home?
Oh, for sure. I eat better on the road. I sleep better on the road. Everything's better on the road. If only I could figure out a way to make it my full-time gig.
We're going to work on that.
2021 goals, right?
Indeed. How about you, Ashley? How do you do, what are your beats in your day? I mean, you're full-time. Now you're working your new career, so as you do this travel. So I'm curious.
Yeah, so for me, the last 6 months have been just trying to figure this out because I'm trying to monetize and trying to figure out the most authentic and efficient way to monetize full-time travel. and what I thought was going to be the path, it's definitely evolved over the last few months. So the way that I kind of structure my week is I'm very type A. So I like a nice schedule. So I try to work like a 9 to 5, which usually ends up being a little bit longer. But I try to get 3 main things done each day. And I kind of have themes for each day of the week of things that I kind of focus on to build and grow. But it's a lot of behind the scenes things that you might not notice. And it could be something like this podcast, I would consider one thing that I'm doing today, right? So it's every day looks very different. And then obviously I spend a lot of time on Clubhouse lately, but that kind of trickles out into other things too. So I think that it is an effective use of my time as well. And then I do one excursion. I try each week to do one excursion, which usually ends up being my content for my YouTube video for each week, and kind of building that out. But there's just a lot. I think that people don't realize, like when I say, oh, I'm a full-time traveler, number one, think about when you go on vacation and how tired you are afterwards. If you go like that, you will burn out very quickly. I've been doing this since July, so I've learned very fast that you have to take things slow and you really have to figure out how to best do whatever you want to do and really focus on a few things and do those things well, as opposed to trying to do everything mediocrely. So, that's kind of like at a high level what I do, but I have probably 10 different streams of income or ways that I make money. So there's just a lot of balls in the air and a lot of moving pieces. And I just try and keep it all flowing and making sense.
And do you find, since you're living out of hotels and you're living out of these Marriotts mostly, do you find like that sounds like a really great home base? You know, it's clean, it's safe, they're high quality. I'm not just saying this because I'm angling for Marriott to become a sponsor of the Solo Travel Club, but it seems like a really great home base. Like whenever I travel internationally, especially in kind of some difficult places, I always look for a really nice hotel to stay in. Or even if I'm not staying in it, I always look to visit the hotel, right? It's a good place to have a clean bathroom and have a good healthy meal and maybe get a little air conditioning, whatever it might be. But how much do you find that enhances this ability to, you're on the road for 10 months in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I obviously am very loyal to Marriott, and there's a reason behind that. I mean, at the hotel that I'm staying at right now, for example, not only do I get a free breakfast and free snacks from noon to 3, I believe, which I actually missed today, but also free dinner. So like today for dinner, I had a bacon wrapped filet and a salad, spinach salad with candied pecans and a couple of sodas, and that was completely free. I did tip them out 20% of what it would have been, but it was still, I mean, it's Mexico City, so it was still like, I think like $5 or something for the tip. And they were really surprised because I guess most people who are on the status, the free dinner, don't really do that. So they're very appreciative of that. But the coolest, I think, perk is that a lot of times you get upgraded. So once you start having status with these hotel chains, typically I get upgraded to like a 1-bedroom suite, which would be the same thing as like maybe renting like a 1-bedroom Airbnb. But not only am I earning points, which I can redeem for free nights, but I also became a travel agent. That's one of my streams of income. So every time that I book with Marriott, I'm making a commission back. And then, you know, I'm not a CPA, so obviously I can't give tax advice, but my tax guy tells me that because I'm a travel agent, now this becomes something that I can write off. So doing my taxes this year was really fun because my entire life is pretty much a write-off. The way that I have it structured.
Don't say it like that, Ashley.
But you get what I'm saying.
No,
so
yeah.
There's a lot of benefits, I think, to traveling. And obviously I'm not a tax professional, so I'm not using the correct lingo, but that's how it feels at least.
No, that was just my awkward attempt at a joke, that's all.
Oh.
So I'm going to reset the room in a moment, but I do want to share, Ashley is a wealth of information about hacking the system. I actually just booked a hotel room in Vegas, and I used one of your hacks. I don't know if it'll work. I'll let you know. But in the notes section, I just wrote waive resort fee. And the reason for that is the person checking you in might think that the manager wrote in the notes section waive resort fee. And so I'll check back in later and let you know if that actually works. I never would have thought to do that.
Where are you staying? Can I ask?
It's at the MGM Park in Vegas.
Oh, it's totally going to work at MGM.
Really? Oh.
I think it's going to work. You have to report back and let us know how it goes.
Now, the other thing is, and I'm curious about the two of you, speaking of Vegas and hotels, I learned this trick in Vegas called the $20 sandwich. We have a video going, Ashley's shaking her head right now. And so I don't do it like this anymore, but the way I learned the $20 sandwich is they ask you for an ID and a credit card, and you fold the $20 bill up and you place it between there like a sandwich. And when you hand it to the person at the front desk, you just ask politely for whatever it is you want, perhaps an upgraded room or something like that. And I have been experimenting with this over the years, not just in Vegas, but lots of hotels, especially I'm going to stay for more than one night. And it's surprisingly effective in terms of, A, making that person's day, because it's hard work to work a front desk. You know, the hours are long. You're on your feet a lot. You often deal with headaches and so on. And then also the person often works very hard to try to accommodate that.
Yeah. And can I add another tip to that? So prior to your to arriving, call up, if you're staying at a property in Vegas with a casino, call up the hotel and ask to speak to you, and they'll transfer you, and then ask for a complimentary upgrade and say, hey, I'm a part of the Players Club at MGM. I don't think Park MGM has a casino, but like, let's say you were staying at the regular MGM, you could call them up and say, hey, I'm a member of the Players Club. Is there any way that you can give me an upgrade? And they'll be like, no, you don't gamble or whatever. Like, you don't have like any points, whatever. And you could be like, well, can you at least give me an upgrade, like of a view? Give me a strip view room. And usually for that, they'll say, yeah. So you've already upgraded yourself up one room category. Then when you arrive for check-in, you ask for the second upgrade. And if you could do the sandwich thing, the $20 sandwich, very effective. Or you're always celebrating something. You've got a milestone birthday of somebody in the group. You're celebrating an engagement, an anniversary, a promotion. It's always a party, and people love a party at check-in and they want to make it special. So, you know, maybe they'll send you up a bottle of champagne. Maybe they'll upgrade you to a suite, especially if you're checking in midweek. That's another travel hack. Come on Thursday. You have a better chance of getting upgraded midweek than on the weekends, and check in earlier, the better, because they'll have more rooms. So those are a few of my biggest tips. And then when you're gambling, make sure you're a part of the Players Club, because you can get a lot of free stuff in Vegas if you lose a lot of money.
Okay, well, all that saved money goes elsewhere. Let me reset this room, and then I want to get into some more tips on the flip side of this. So welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. We're taping this podcast from Clubhouse, the social media app that features real-time conversation. Besides hosting the podcast, I've been building a community on this app, including in this room, Solo, the club for singles, and which has about 30,000 subscribers at this point. Please consider joining and find out more about all the Solo clubs, including the Solo Travel Club, which Ahita and Ashley are two of the star moderators. You can find out more about that at soloclubs.com. Ahita, do you have any tips about traveling in general, but especially about solo traveling? How do you make it work for you?
Yeah, so some of the ways that I travel, a lot of people will ask me, where are you going to next, right? And I don't have a list. It's as long as it's someplace I haven't been. And that flexibility of not having a particular destination in mind means that when I am going on a trip, I know what dates I'm going, but generally not the destination. So I will use a lot of the Google Flights or Skyscanner go everywhere option and just see like, where's the weather nice that I want to go to right now? And what are some of the cheaper flights? And that's how I will pick my destination. So it's really a little bit more of an adventure, but it also is a price hack. And then in terms of traveling, like sometimes I've gone, especially when I'm solo traveling, instead of renting the entire place on an Airbnb, I'll just rent the room. So you might be staying with a family, but as long as the room is private and the bathroom is private, that's all I really need. So when I was in Vietnam still on that same trip, I think there were times where I was paying maybe $11 a day for my lodging. So it was super affordable, and I'm very food focused, but my food does not always have to be the most fine dining destinations, right? Like I certainly will go on some Michelin star excursions if that's available. But even that, like we think in the States and North America that Michelin dining is super expensive. I've had meals for less than $100, like all of the courses, 5 courses in Poland, because I went to a Michelin starred restaurant that I happened to find in Poland when I was looking up my options for food. So keep an open mind, because what may be true in your home country may not be the same as when you're abroad, and be flexible, whether it's your destination. I know some people have flexible schedules. So if you have flexible dates you can travel, there's Scott's Cheap Flights, there's other resources that you can use. to kind of say, okay, there's a random mistake fair that's coming up in 2 weeks. Can I go? So it really depends on what works for your schedule and your availability. But I've found that flexibility will go a long way in terms of savings for you.
You said mistake fare?
Yes. So mistake fares are when the airline somehow has coded something differently. Someone made an oops, and someone out there that has a full-time job looking up these fares finds it and then sends it out to you. There's some that go out for free. There's some that you might have to hunt. You can even learn how to do it yourself. I'm certainly not that advanced, but I use the subscriptions instead. And they'll send out, I think there was a few years ago, it was called Dubai Blackout because everyone ended up going to Dubai for only a couple $100. I see Ashley here on video nodding her head because yeah, that was a mistake fare. I didn't jump on it. I didn't get it quite as quickly. They go fast, but if you have flexibility, you can certainly save a lot of money.
I have to imagine that the airlines also sign up for those those alerts so they can catch their own mistakes.
They fix it fairly quickly, and also sometimes they don't always honor it. You won't get in trouble for booking it, but there is a chance you got to just jump on it because they might email you and say, hey, this was a mistake, we're canceling. But a lot of times, I would say more often than not, they just change it so that no one else can book. But if you've gotten in, you're good.
I agree with you about the food thing. First of all, almost anywhere you eat in Vietnam, as an aside, the food is absolutely crazy delicious. I'm not one of these Michelin star hunters in any way. I've only had Michelin meals twice, once in France and then once in Hong Kong. But the Hong Kong meal, I think, cost me $25, if that. You know what I mean? So just because something's Michelin star doesn't mean it's going to be expensive. And so it's worth, you might have to wait or get lucky in terms of getting a reservation, but it doesn't have to be expensive. But a follow-up, Ahita, do you pick different locations depending on whether it's solo or group? Or does that not have any effect?
No, it actually has no effect. So people joke on Clubhouse because I'll say, you're always welcome to come on my trips, and they think that this is something new that I'm saying. But I've been saying this for as long as I've traveled. My trips are always open. Anyone that wants to come along, as long as you're financially responsible and generally responsible and not going to be a threat to my existence or to others, you are welcome to come along on the trip. And I plan it as though it's myself. And if others want to join, they can. So I'm going regardless. And that has been the most freeing part of solo travel for me. I'm going to go on my adventures, and I hope people join because, again, I'm an extroverted soul. So the more the merrier. But if they don't come, it's cool too. And what I found interesting pre-pandemic, when I actually used to use my Instagram account, I haven't in a really long time, people would always say after I went on my adventures, they'd be like, oh my God, that looks so cool. I want to come. And I've always said, you wouldn't have come. If when I was planning Armenia and Azerbaijan, I said, hey, do you want to come to Azerbaijan? Most people would say, don't know what's there. But once I go and they see the adventures I had, the foods I ate, the people I met, then everyone wants to come, right? So I think I've just really gotten a lot out of my adventures by leaning into the possibilities and not letting the stereotypes scare me away.
I think that's wonderful. So I want to ask the two of you about packing. So in the early days of Clubhouse, when I first started the Solo Travel Club, I opened a room about luggage. It was a crazy popular room because people have very strong opinions about luggage. But what ended up happening as part of that, where there were two camps of people there was Team Peter and there was Team Anne. So Anne is an ultra light packer, just the carry-on, has it all hacked. And I am a notorious overpacker. And it's like the Boy Scout in me, even though I was never a Boy Scout. I just want to be ready for everything. Plus, my clothes, I'm 6'5", and my clothes are enormous. And so you put a pair of shoes in a carry-on bag, and it's half gone. So, but nonetheless, are you Team Pete or Team Anne? Are you a light packer or a heavy packer? And can you give 3 tips for the solo traveler who, in terms of their packing?
I can go first. So I am definitely Team Anne. I am also a light packer. So I'm not a backpacker. I've said that before in other rooms. I don't like carrying my bags that way, but I am just a carry-on. I'm the roller bag. That's all I have. And then one of my tips is going to be take a big fluffy beach bag that can double as that's where I put in all of my souvenirs. So I will usually plan my outfits. I learned this from a friend. I plan my outfits in advance so that I know what I'm wearing for the most part with some extras. So that's all I'm packing. It's very annoying when I do it before the trip, but it really saves me a lot of space.
Can I add something real quick?
Of course.
So this idea of planning outfits, I have a friend who would print out the 10-day weather forecast. And then he would, based upon the weather forecast, he would write down what he's going to wear each of the days. I was like, whoa, that's next level.
So Ashley and I are both nodding our heads because yes, I don't quite print it out, but I do look at the weather and what's anticipated and try to plan accordingly because again, all I have is one piece of luggage. I have my extra like beach bag, big fluffy duffel, but that's really mostly empty. I might have a pair of shoes in there. I might have like an extra outfit for any reason, but that's what I'm going to bring my stuff back in, anything that I find. So I am all about traveling light. It saved me sometimes when there's been not missed flights on my end, but because there's delays and they are able to put me on the next flight. There was one time I had literally 25 minutes and guys, I listed the gate agent. First of all, I did my research. All of us had a flight that was delayed. So all of us missed our connections. And we went up to the gate agent. And while I was waiting for my turn, I researched the flights and I knew exactly which one I wanted to take. And it was 25 minutes away. And he looked at me when I got there. He's like, well, I'll look. I was like, no, I know which flight it is. Here's the codes you're putting in. He found it and he's like, okay, you're going to have to trust me. I need you to start going towards the gate now. When you get to the gate, your ticket will be there. But I need you to go to the gate right now because if you wait for me to print it out and like get you confirmed, you're going to miss it. And I was like, what time is your shift over and what is your badge? Because if I don't make that flight, I am coming right back here, sir. And so when I went, they're like, oh, you must be XYZ. I'm like, no, I'm this other person. Do you not have my ticket? And she like refreshed her system and she's like, oh, no, never mind. You are here. And it worked. But that was all because the first question he asked, he's like, did you check luggage? And I said, no, this is all I have.
I know. Look, I'm not saying Team Pete is the way to go. I'm just saying that it's my team. You know, I'm stuck with them. How about you, Ashley?
Okay, so I used to be Team Peter. I was the person who I would check in with my 28-inch suitcase that was already overweight at the beginning of the trip. And now I travel with 2 carry-on suitcases, and one is pretty much all my stuff, and the other one is all my camera equipment.
So talk to us a little bit more, like, how do you do it, right? I mean, especially you're on the road all the time.
Yeah, so you have to, like, all my clothes pretty much match. So I have, like, the same color scheme. I'm pretty, I'm from Los Angeles, so we wear, like, black, gray, and white, pretty much, all neutrals. We don't wear a lot of color. So everything I wear pretty much matches. And then you just have to be very strategic with what you pack. My 2 carry-on suitcases, I have an away suitcase, the larger carry-on size. So you can fit a lot in that. I do check that bag, though, because I have full-size liquids. So I travel because there's certain things like shampoo and makeup and things like that you just can't get on the road. So I have like 3 shampoos. I started the year with 3 shampoos and 3 conditioners and 2 deodorants and, 2 lotions and like certain things that I didn't want to have to worry about finding abroad. And
your shampoos, your lotions.
Right? And it's nothing fancy.
Sure,
it's just like L'Oreal, but it's hard to find L'Oreal shampoo sometimes depending on where you are in the world.
And you have to be camera ready sometimes, right? This is your business.
It's funny because I used to be like so into that stuff. I have my full makeup bag. I've not worn makeup one time, I think, since I've been traveling. And I've just learned I'm going to look like crap on camera. I'm going to be sweating. Like in every YouTube video, I'm always sweating. And my mom's always like, you look so hot. I'm like, because I am. But you just learn that I think this has been one of the best exercises for my perfectionism is that I look like crap. Take it or leave it. If you want to see some hot, Instagram girl on YouTube, this is not the channel for you. This is the real deal. And I look a hot mess half the time, and that's okay. And so my people will find me, and that will be it. So I've learned just to be me and to embrace, I have super frizzy hair. So my hair is always frizzy because I tend to go to humid places, and it is what it is. So it's been great.
Do you have Away, Samsonite, or Toomey? Those were the big winners in the luggage room.
That is correct. Yep. So I have a Toomey carry-on, which you guys, my biggest piece of advice is don't cheap out on your luggage. So I have an Away suitcase and a Toomey suitcase. Now, the Toomey, if you know Toomey, a carry-on for Toomey is about $1,000. I did not pay $1,000 for my carry-on. I went to the Bloomingdale's outlet and got it, I think, for $250. And I've had it for 5 years. And that was my Toomey was my corporate suitcase that I traveled with when I worked in corporate. And that thing has been through hull and back, and it looks brand new. It does not have a scratch on it. It has been the best suitcase I've ever had. In the past, I've bought Samsonite. I like Samsonite, but I like Tumi better. And then my Way suitcase is fantastic, and it has a built-in battery, which I really like, so I can charge on the go.
How about you, Ahita?
For me, I am definitely team Away, and I'll walk you through why. So as you know, I am...
I'm having flashbacks. People have such strong opinions. Okay, please.
We do have strong opinions. So I am going to be team Away for life, and that is because the bigger carry-on, so if you're not familiar with Away, they have two sizes for the carry-on. There's the regular carry-on, and then there's the bigger one. And the bigger one is bigger, my baby 2 inches. So what they did is, the U.S. carriers have their size requirements that they list on their website. But if you actually go measure what the bins are, it's slightly bigger. So what Away did is they went and measured what the slightly bigger compartments are, the actual compartments, not the size that they tell you. And then they made their bags slightly smaller than that. So you get a little bit of extra space, which my guy friends think I'm crazy for caring about. But for me, as someone who's 5'1" and 3/4", yes, the 3/4 matters. It's important. Those are like maybe 2 or 3 dresses that I can fit in there, like especially if I'm traveling in the summertime. So I love the Away for that reason, because it gives me the maximum amount of space while being a luggage that I know is going to fit most places around the world. The only place it hasn't fit is when I took like a little propeller plane, I think going from like Laos to wherever, and they had to put my bag at the bottom, but they had to put everyone's bag in the bottom unless it was like a briefcase. So I'm team Away for life.
I'm going to make a case for Samsonite just because I remember what the case was, which is Samsonite has an incredible return repair policy. And so you basically buy the luggage and you can have it for life, more or less. You can just keep bringing it back, getting it fixed. Obviously, they've been in the business for a long time and make really good luggage on top of that. So Ahita's on like 5% on her battery right now, which is a total rookie move. And
I'm not a podcaster, Peter. I wasn't ready.
So what we're going to do is we're going to keep going until her battery dies, and then we'll wrap up with Ashley, whatever it is we're talking about. We're only going to go maybe 10 more minutes anyways, and then we're going to open it up to questions. Let me do a quick room reset. This is a podcast recording for Solo, the Single Person's Guide to a Remarkable Life. I have a full-time solo traveler in Ashley who's making a living and living out of hotels, which I think is absolutely incredible. And then Ahita, who is a part-time traveler, but part-time is not even really quite right. She's been to 61 countries, been all over the world, does this in her nights and weekends and vacations and holidays all the time. And they are both star moderators for the Solo Travel Club. You can find out more about the Solo Clubs on soloclubs.com. I want to ask you about flaneuring. And I think I'll start by asking, do you know what flaneuring is? They're on camera.
Not even a little bit. I was about to Google on the side. So if you're going to tell me, that will save me a search.
So flaneuring, I had a previous podcast episode on it. It's one of my favorites. It's with an Italian academic who wrote a book about flaneuring in Paris. And flaneuring was invented in Paris. The flaneur was, I think this is in the mid-1800s, was a gentleman. Obviously, flaneuring is not limited to men anymore, but a man of some wealth would dress up and would walk around the city and take in the sights and sounds and smells of the cityscape. And this was around the time that Paris became Paris, the Paris that we know, with the boulevards and all this kind of stuff. And so the act of flaneuring is to walk a city alone, to do it solo. And it's important that it's solo because of the editing process that we talked about. It's very hard to flaneur, to truly wander aimlessly with someone else. However, one of the things that he had said in the podcast, which I liked, was just because you're alone doesn't mean that you are alone. That is, you become part of the crowd. That is, you might have interactions with locals, with shopkeepers, with a kid, with a stray cat, whatever it might be. And I'm curious, and this is connected to my next question, do you flaneur? Do you walk the cities? What cities do you like to walk? And then also I'm talking to two women here, especially, how do you keep yourself safe as a solo traveler, whether it be walking or beyond? Let's let Ahita go because of her battery.
Thank you. But I will say I do flaneur. I had never used that term before, so I love that I've learned something new. I try to do that as often as I can. I flaneur with all of the local pets, especially the cats. I am the person that is going to probably not notice you, but I will notice your pet, and that will make me very excited. But you might have heard me say in other rooms, even though I didn't know the term, that what I love doing in new places is getting lost and like hearing the sounds and the sights and the smells and taking it in and kind of like becoming a little part of that for a bit. And I bring that with me. So this is somewhat unrelated, but one of my favorite travel tips just for fun is that I Shazam the music that I hear in every country that I go to, because it creates a playlist for me. So when I come home, it kind of transports me through sound back to that moment, that sight, that smell, the shop that I heard that music in. So I absolutely think that's a huge part of my travel experience. If I'm not becoming a little bit, if the city isn't getting a little bit of me and I'm not getting a little bit of that destination, I feel like it's a failed trip. But in terms of safety, I heard this in another room and I'm going to start doing this. Someone said, wear one of, like, if you have those wireless earbuds, wear one earbud in your ear so that you know where you're going, but the other ear, leave it open so you can still hear what's happening around you and you're staying safe without looking like you may not know where you're going. So I wanted to pass on that tip because I was like, that's genius. I definitely need to do that on my next one.
If I may, before Ashley answers, I don't do it as much now, but when I was new to traveling, especially when I was solo, I would stop into record stores, local record stores, and I would just make friends with the shopkeeper. And I would just say, if there was one artist, if there was one song, if there's one band that I must know, who is it? And then I would just buy the CD. This is back when CDs were a big thing. And then I would bring the CD back for the same reason. And if it's the best in the country, you're likely to like it. How about you, Ashley? Do you flaneur?
So I started doing a lot of walks because I had a lot of free time after losing my job. So I would go on these like 2-hour walks back in LA. So when I started traveling, my biggest fear was gaining the weight back. So that was something I continued to do. And it was a way to kind of get a lay of the land. So when I would go to a new place, I would kind of walk around, take in the sights, figure out like what places I wanted to check out and eat, or where the, coolest coffee shop is I wanted to try, that sort of thing. And it's kind of become a part of my day, that like late morning, early afternoon walk right after breakfast. And I just go out and walk and get my steps in and take in the city. And I like to listen to, I have like an Amazon Music account. And so before I started like a little playlist called Ashley's World Adventure. And in every city, I add songs. And so I kind of got the idea because I used to run marathons or complete marathons, I should say. I was very slow, but I did it a few times. But I would have a playlist so I would know when a certain song came on what mile I was at. I'd be like, okay, this is my song for mile 8. Well, it's the same thing for my playlist now. I add songs in certain countries so that when I play them back, it makes me think of that country and it brings back the memories of my walks.
Oh, that's lovely. Is this available publicly?
My playlist?
Yeah.
It's on Amazon Music. I don't know if there's a way I can share it, but I don't know. It's just songs I like. But.
Oh, it's lovely. Yeah. And what about safety? This is, you're out on the road a lot. What are your sort of go-to kind of habits or tips that you would give people, especially who might be new to solo travel?
Yeah, I think be aware of your surroundings and kind of look around. I think one of the biggest things that, you can easily forget on the road is that, especially as an American, we're really into our gadgets. Which aren't always as popular depending on where you are. So look around at the locals. Do they have AirPods in their ears? Are they walking around with an iPhone 11? Little things like that can make you stand out. And, I made a rookie mistake when I first came to Mexico City. I walk around with my AirPods in and holding my phone with, iPhone 11. And I was in a part of Mexico City when I first got here that was very much more local. So I stood out and nobody else had an iPhone or AirPods. And somebody actually came by me on a motorcycle and tried to take the phone out of my hand. And that was totally my fault. Like, who do I think I am, right? Now, I'm assertive. And I cussed the guy out and he didn't get it from me and I flicked him off. And that was there's a whole Facebook Live about it if you want to hear me tell the story. But, it's like that was so stupid thinking back about it. So look around, be aware, be alert, don't be in your own little world, pay attention and don't look like a tourist. Try and look like a local, blend in. So especially as solo travelers and solo female traveler, that sort of thing. And then you're always meeting somebody. If somebody asks, are you alone? Oh no, my boyfriend's coming or I'm, meeting my friend, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to wrap this up, not because I want to wrap it up, but because Heat is at 2%, and I want to get some people up on stage. If you want to raise your hand, we'll do a little Q&A here. I want to ask the two of you, you're on a plane, you're flying alone, you have a great seat, because of course you have a great seat, because you're a seasoned traveler and you know how to get great seats. And someone asks you, they say, oh, I'm here with my partner. Would you mind moving seats so we can sit together? How do you respond to that?
It depends. If I am in a window seat, no, this is my seat. I got it. If it's a great seat, but maybe I'm on the aisle and me moving will allow me to get the window seat, then yes. So it depends. Is it serving me in some way? Otherwise, no, it's not happening. Maybe for a kid, if like a child and their parent are separated, then maybe.
Ashley?
So this happens all the time.
I know.
And I actually have I have a fear of flying, believe it or not. I get really anxious when I fly. So I have to fly on the left side of the plane. And I've had situations where somebody's already been in my seat when I've gotten on the plane. Like, oh, hey, like I'm here with, my family. Right. Like, can we just switch? And I can't fly on the right side of a plane. Like, I just like the balance. I know it sounds weird, but I can't do it. So what I've learned is that for Delta, I have some status with Delta, and you can book priority seats for free with status. But if you're just a normal person, you would have to pay extra to sit closer to the front. So what I'll say is, you know what? Especially now with COVID, you can say you can't switch seats because of COVID in case you contracted, they want to check your seats. But, I'm actually in a priority seat and, you have to pay extra for that. So I don't think it would be fair to switch and they don't really like it, that sort of thing, kind of blame it on the airline and the extra fee. And people usually let it go and will ask somebody else, but I hate it. I don't know. I feel like if you have a family, you guys really just try and book your family together. Don't put that on a solo traveler. I just think it's so rude when people do that. Because a lot of times as solo travelers, we might pay extra to book the seat that we want to sit in. And even though we're traveling alone, doesn't mean that we don't want to sit there, that we don't care, because, we picked that seat for a reason. So that's my 2 cents on that.
All right. Well, my feeling is very similar. I was afraid you two were going to be like, oh, yeah, of course I change. So I'm 6'5", and my seat, every inch is precious in those seats. And so I will change if I'm no worse off, is the way I treat it. If I'm no worse off, and given my criteria, I'm happy to do it. But generally, I'm just like, I can't do that for you. I just can't. Sorry. All right. I'm going to say, Hita, Ashley, thank you so much for doing this. I know this is a bit of an experiment to do a live podcast recording on Clubhouse. I knew you two were going to be spectacular, and that's why I invited you. We're going to turn the recording off and do some Q&A. But one last thing, do you have any sort of parting thoughts as you say goodbye to the recording for all of those solo listeners out there who may not have even gone to a movie alone, may never have even dined alone, and yet may be contemplating a solo road trip, a solo international trip, a solo trip to another city? What one parting thought, encouragement, tip would you give them?
I hope that by having the two of us on this podcast, you have received two different perspectives of how it's possible to travel, whether you are employed full-time, whether you're someone that lives on the road. So my one general encouragement is go travel. It's okay however you want to travel. If you're someone who wants to be at a resort all the time, that's cool. You want to be a backpacker, that's totally cool too, but get out there. Travel, see the world, see what you learn about yourself. So don't let your fears stop you, whether it's the destination or just getting on the road for the first few times.
Start planning it. Put it on the calendar. That's a great way to do it. And then buy the ticket. Once the ticket's purchased, you're on. Ashley.
Yeah, I think that's so true, everything that you guys said. I remember you make a decision after a few glasses of rosé, and it sounds crazy but fun. But then, I remember putting in my 30-day notice for my apartment. I'm like, what am I doing? And the first 2 months of this was like, I'm ruining my life. What am I doing? I made a mistake. But I truly, truly, truly believe in anything in life. If you feel called to do something, if you feel a tug to do, it could be something as simple as going to a movie or going to dinner by yourself for the first time, or it could be something as big as becoming a full-time traveler. Do it. Because once you make a decision to do something, the universe, God, fate, whatever you want to call it, will conspire to help you make it happen. And it's so crazy that once you make that decision and you're committed to the decision and to the outcome of being whatever you want, the people that come into your life, the opportunities that come into your life. It's crazy. It's almost like magic. But that's manifestation. That's the power of positive thought and just going and chasing after your dreams. So like, don't let a mediocre life stop you from having an amazing life. And that's with anything, not just travel. Go out, chase your dreams, and do whatever will make you happy.
Thank you for listening to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. For more about our guests and show notes, go to petermcgraw.org. Please subscribe and share with your single friends.